Hello friends, in this video we are going to discuss about the first section of political theory, liberty, an introduction to the concept of liberty. Now about the course outline. Lesson 1 Introduction, Lesson 2 Meaning and definitions of liberty, Lesson 3 Major characteristics, Lesson 4 Scope and significance of liberty, Lesson 5 Evolution of the concept, Lesson 6 Major forms of liberty, Lesson 7 Conceptual differences, Lesson 8 Conclusion, and the last lesson is about the reading and references. As an introduction, we can say the importance of liberty in political theory, in social life, in academics, and contemporary relevance. In the words of Montesquieu, there is no word that admits of more various significations and has made more varied impressions on the human mind than that of liberty. This itself underlines the importance of liberty. The concept of liberty has three main connotations: the notion of choice, the absence of constraints to make and exercise such a choice, and the existence conditions that enable you to actuate the choice. Importance of liberty in political theory. The concept of liberty or freedom denotes a very important principle of political philosophy. Liberty is sometimes regarded as a distinctive principle of liberalism, but freedom is always acclaimed as a universal principle. Then about the importance of liberty in social life. It is relatively a recent phenomenon. Concept of individual liberty is not there in Athenian society. Athenian society features a small group of truly free people and lot of slaves who fuel the economy. Of course, women couldn't vote and were relatively voiceless. As our collective political philosophy matured in the centuries after Greeks, we have come to realize that there is a conflict between individual liberty and democracy. Individual liberty protects individuals from the tyranny of the majority. It establishes a base level of intellectual, philosophical, spiritual, and economic diversity that ensures that there is enough free play of ideas in a society. Then about the contemporary relevance of liberty. Societies that focus on individual liberties, that is, free societies, often produce economic freedom. When there are more choices in the market, there is a tendency for lower prices at higher quality levels for products and services. Freedom leads to more stable societies. When governments give a proper forum for dissenting voices, the society as a whole is more stable. High levels of liberty lead to more contented citizens. When people feel that they can express themselves without being sued into silence or thrown in jail, they can take more risk artistically. Greater political liberty often leads to greater cultural expression in the society. Then about the meaning and definitions. We will focus upon the origin of word, the definitions put forward by various thinkers like Hobbes, Seeley, McKinney, and Lasky. The term liberty is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free from all shackles or bonds. The liberal writers use the terms liberty and freedom synonymously. According to Thomas Hobbes, in an ideal sense, liberty means a license or a condition to do what you like. Liberty is thus the right of a person to do what is required by him or her for the best possible development of his personality by following a course that is morally as well as legally right. Liberty is thus a relative concept and is bound by the restraints of legality and morality. According to Thomas Hobbes, liberty consists in absence of restraints. In the words of the English historian John Robert Seeley, liberty is the opposite of a government. In the words of McKinney, freedom is not absence of all restraints, but rather the substitutions of rational ones for irrational. In the words of Lasky, liberty is the existence of those conditions of social life without which no one can in general be at his best self. Liberty is the eager maintenance of that atmosphere in which men have the opportunities to be their best selves. J.S. Mill, in his essay on liberty, viewed liberty as not to have one's individual opinions suppressed by collective decisions of society and state. Now we are going to discuss about the major characteristics of liberty. The first one is that liberty does not mean the absence of all restraints. The second one is liberty admits the presence of rational restraints and the absence of irrational restraints. Then third, liberty postulates the existence of such conditions as can enable the people to enjoy their rights and develop their personalities. Liberty is not a license to do anything and everything. It means the freedom to do only those things which are considered worth doing or worth enjoying. Then, liberty is possible only in a civil society and not in a state of nature or a state of jungle. State of anarchy can never be a state of liberty. That is, liberty is possible only in a civil society. It is not possible in a state of nature. Then liberty is for all. Liberty means the presence of adequate opportunities for all as can enable them to use their rights. Liberty is present equally for all. In society, law is an essential condition for liberty. Law maintains the conditions which are essential for the enjoyment of liberty by all the people of the state. Therefore, law is an existence condition for liberty. Liberty is the most fundamental of all the rights. It is a condition and the most essential right of the people. Liberty enjoys priority next only to the right of life. With the right of life, liberty is the most important fundamental right of the people. Let us examine the scope and significance of the concept of liberty. The problem of liberty involves the adjustment of claims between the individual and society. The main agent for adjusting the claims between the individual and society is the state. State is the agency for regulating these relations. The concern for liberty was stimulated by some external authority so constrained was expected to constrain an individual or group that it could no longer act according to its desire or custom. In addition to the wish for certain activities, there is always present a feeling of capability. The claim for liberty arises when the individual is not permitted to use means in the outer environment which would otherwise be used. Liberty in any realm is the lack of restraint not merely on what men care to do at the moment but also on what they may care to do. That is, liberty in any realm is a lack of restraint not merely on what they are doing at that moment but also on what they may care to do in the future. The liberty involves a continued existence of unclosed possibilities. Wherever there is unclosed possibilities, there is a claim for liberty. Unclosed possibilities of choice, even after one has been taken, allowing a person to continue to do what he wants if he changes his mind. Even if he wants to change his mind, he must be able to do the same thing. A man has liberty in any area when several liberties are open to him in that area. We can truly say that a man has liberty in an area if every liberty in an area is open to that man. Having liberty of speech does not mean having a liberty to speak in one way, or if that is refused a liberty to go to prison. Rather, it implies freedom to speak or not to speak a certain time or another, in one particular way or another, that is, having the liberty in any type in that realm. The personal liberty, the practical opportunity that we have of exercising our faculties and fulfilling our desires. The practical opportunity that we have of exercising our faculties and fulfilling our desires is known as the personal liberty. Liberties that are desired by some are in conflict with those already enjoyed by others in the society. Therefore, adjusting the balance of our liberty with others' liberty is very, very important. Origin and evolution of the concept of liberty. It has of historical importance. Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in 121 to 180 AD had said that a polity in which there is the same law for all, a polity administered with regard to equal rights and equal freedom of speech. Then came the age of the social contractualist. Thomas Hobbes has defined liberty or freedom signifies the absence of all impediments to action that are contained in the nature and intrinsic quality of agent. According to Thomas Hobbes, it is proper to state that the person who is tied in chains wants the liberty to lead, as the impediment is not with the person but with the chains. Whereas that cannot be said of one who is sick or lame, because the impediment in this case is with oneself. According to Thomas Hobbes, fear and necessity are the motivating factors for liberty. He takes into account only of the absence of constraint aspect. Thomas Hobbes totally undermines the notion of choice. Hobbes' understanding of the liberty is based on the two important factors of fear and necessity rather than the important concept of choice. But then came in with the age of John Locke's choice exercised in a moral framework as a concept of liberty according to John Locke. The moral framework of John Locke is based on the laws of nature. Among them, equality is the central tenet. The laws of nature according to Locke is nobody ought to harm another in his life, liberty, health or possessions. According to John Locke, liberty is a natural right. As a natural right, liberty is also considered as a universal right, that is, a right equally endowed to everyone in the society. The concept of civil society is drawn to preserve this natural right of the citizens. The John Locke does not specify ways to bring about the existence conditions to facilitate its choice. Till now, the age of John Locke, liberty is considered as totally an individual concept. Then, with the emergence of Rousseau considered freedom as a collective venture and as freeing oneself from selfish motives towards a larger group good for the entire group. Liberty is not at all a natural right for Rousseau. Liberty for him is the liberation from a state of unfreedom. The people can be liberated only through the obedience to law. In Rousseau, the element of choice has a right to choose the right option. He also facilitates the right to choose the right option. Then, with the coming of utilitarians, Jeremy Bentham viewed liberty as the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Then another utilitarian, J.S. Mill, is the ardent believer of the concept of liberty. According to J.S. Mill, the liberty not to have one's individual opinion suppressed by the collective decisions of society and state. Protection of individual liberty from the interference of state and society is important for J.S. Mill. According to J.S. Mill, freedom or liberty is an end in itself. Mill discusses liberty in three connotations, that is, a liberty of thought and discussion, principle of individuality, and limits of authority over individual good. He also makes a distinction between the self-regarding and other-regarding activities. This distinction is made for the purpose to draw the sphere of non-intervention in individual's life by the state. The major forms of liberty are natural liberty, civil liberty, political liberty, economic liberty, and individual liberty. Natural liberty. The concept of natural liberty originated in mid-16th century. The natural liberty can be defined as the freedom which a person or animal possesses in nature. Specifically, the state in which human beings are free to act as they think fit, unhindered by laws or regulatory social structures. The natural liberty is the unrestrained freedom to do whatever one likes. It can be termed as an unscientific use of liberty. In the words of Rousseau, natural liberty is what a man loses by the social contract as natural liberty and an unlimited right to anything that tempts him which he can obtain. Natural liberty seems to be more like a license rather than liberty in the real sense. Then, civil liberty. We can examine civil liberty from the viewpoint of Ernest Barker. Ernest Barker, in his book Principles of Social and Political Theory, published in the year 1951, defined civil liberty as the liberty of man in the capacity of an individual person, his personal liberty. It has three main connotations. First one, physical freedom from injury or threat to the life, health, and movement of the body. Second one, intellectual freedom for the expression of thought and belief. And the third one, practical freedom of the play of will and the exercise of choice in the general field of contractual action and relations with other persons. The first article, that is a physical freedom from injury or threat to the life, health, and movement of the body, is almost non-controversial. That is, a freedom of movement, etc., should not be restricted except in the interest of public safety, law and order, which are themselves the essential conditions of freedom. The second article, that is the intellectual freedom for the expression of thought and belief. This was defended by the most ardent defender of liberty, J.S. Mill, in his essay on liberty. According to him, the permanent interest of man as a progressive being can be furthered by the advancement of knowledge. This advancement of knowledge flourishes best in an atmosphere of free discussion. It is necessary that there should be a freedom to criticize the existing institutions and to put forward unpopular opinions. The third opinion that is the practical freedom of the play of will and the exercise of choice in the general field of contractual action and relations with other persons needed closer examination. The third article says that people enjoy the freedom to enter into contracts for their mutual advantage, provided that no damage is inflicted on a third party. But the difficulty arises when this freedom is exploited by a stronger party in a bargain to impose very disadvantageous terms on the weaker party. L.T. Hobhouse, in his book Elements of Social Justice, published in 1922, insists on the equality of contracting parties in this matter. Absolute freedom of contract in an extreme case may be used to allow a man or even force him to sell himself to slavery and thereby deprive him of his freedom in perpetuity. Now about political liberty. Whereas a man enjoys civil liberty in the capacity of an individual person, he enjoys a political liberty in the capacity of a citizen. For William Baxter, for he considered the government as something external. According to William Baxter, by keeping in view that the government is something external, political liberty means the power of curbing the government. But in the case of modern democracy, where the government is considered as constituted by the people themselves, political liberty is not of curbing government, but of constituting and controlling. It is mainly about constituting and controlling the government, constituting it by a general act of choice or election. The way of constituting the government is by an act of choice called as elections, in which we all freely share on the basis of universal suffrage, controlling it by the method of general and continuous process of discussions and debates, in which we all have freely share according to our capacities. This view of political liberty postulates the positive right of the people to be represented in decision-making bodies and to influence their decisions by freely articulating their views and opinions on issues of public policy. In effect, it is intended to ensure that the state shall be sensitive and responsible to the prevailing social constituencies. So it is a positive right to the people to be represented in the public decision-making bodies. Now about economic liberty. While a person enjoys civil liberty in his capacity as a person and political liberty in his capacity as a citizen, economic liberty belongs to a man in his capacity as a worker, whether with hand or brain, engaged in some gainful occupation or service. In fact, economic liberty is a ticklish issue. It is capable of conflicting interpretations by conflicting parties: employer and worker, trader and consumer, landlord and tenant. One party would interpret it as a freedom to secure maximum profit. The other would insist on reasonable terms, reasonable price and quality, reasonable rent, etc. Under such circumstances, if the stronger party is not corrupted to safeguard the interest of the weaker party, the principle of liberty will be reduced to mockery. It is in the economic sphere that the claims of negative and positive liberty came into direct conflict and confrontation. This is a sphere where the adjustment between the claims of liberty and equality becomes most essential. Now about individual liberty. Individual liberty is the freedom to pursue one's desires and interests as a person, but which do not clash with the interests or desires of others. The one thing to remember is that while pursuing the interest as a person, it must not be clash with the interest or desires of others. It includes the freedom of speech and expression, freedom of residence, freedom of movement, freedom of conscience, freedom to choose any profession or trade or occupation, and all these freedoms fall under the category of individual freedom. But all these freedoms are to be exercised in a way as it does not hinder the equal freedom of others, as well as it does not violate the public order, health, and morality. There are many conceptual differences with respect to the concept of liberty. These include authority, license, legitimacy, and freedom. Liberty and license. When the liberty is interpreted as absence or removal of all restraints on the actions of individual in utter disregard of the interest of other individuals, then the liberty degenerates into license. Such a situation, when the liberty degenerates into license, is not compatible with the maintenance of social order. It is also not compatible with the maintenance of liberty itself. In that case, one man's liberty would become another's constraint or oppression. That is, the liberty of the strong would amount to the suppression of the weaker. For example, a thief's liberty to take away anybody's property would become a threat to everybody's security. If freedom is not to become prerogative of a single individual or for that matter of a group of individuals, it must be regulated in such a way that none shall use his freedom so as to destroy the freedom of others. The regulation of freedom is in such a way that none shall use his freedom so as to destroy the freedom of others. L.T. Hobhouse, in his Elements of Social Justice, published in the year 1922, has pointed out that the uncharted freedom of one would be the conditional servitude of all, and conversely, a freedom to be enjoyed by all must impose some restraint upon all. For a freedom to be enjoyed by all, there must be reasonable restrictions to be imposed upon all. Liberty and authority. If liberty of the individual is increasingly restricted in the supposed interest of society, the result would be an unconditional submission to authority, hence the loss of liberty. Therefore, the liberty of the individuals has to be restricted by a measure of equal liberty to be enjoyed by others. As liberty is demanded for man as a rational being, it follows that liberty is meant to enable men to pursue rational objects or ideal objects. If they do so, each individual shall pursue his happiness in consonance with the happiness of society. And that is, an individual's good will become an integral part of the social good. In such a perfect state, no regulations would be necessary. But since in the real world, individuals are not at all perfect, they are only capable of perfection. Therefore, the regulation of liberty becomes necessary to safeguard liberty itself. In the words of Barkan, liberty within the state is thus a regulated and relative liberty. It is the greatest common measure of liberty which is possible for all as determined and defined. First one, by the need of each to enjoy similar and equal liberty with others, and the second one, by the need of all to enjoy the specific liberty of realizing specific capacities. Therefore, the regulation of liberty implies the recognition of authority of the state over the individual. The regulation of liberty in such a way that there must be a regulation of authority of the state over the individual. If we deny the absolute liberty to the individual because no individual is perfect, we cannot accord absolute authority to the state because no state is also perfect. Limitations on the authority of the state have to be laid down to make authority more meaningful with reference to its social purpose. Then there is a picture showing the relationship between the liberty, authority and license. Liberty and legitimacy. The quality of an act or arrangement is regarded as lawful by those affected by the quality of the act. In other words, they regard it reasonable and beneficial for themselves as well as for the larger society. The legitimacy, then what is meant by legitimacy? Legitimacy denotes the support extended by the people to the state and its law out of the moral beliefs and values of the people. The state authority which would be more justified if it is backed by moral support and legitimacy instead of mere force. The authority of the state or law would prove most effective only when the people accepted it on moral grounds. When most people recognize the moral obligation to obey the law, they would be active from a moral motive and not under compulsion. Therefore, in such a society, people can exercise their liberty. Then, liberty and freedom. The liberty and freedom are often most contrasting terms. Many political thinkers use the words liberty and freedom interchangeably. Sir Isabelle in his famous essay also used both the words interchangeably. The liberty tends to be most useful in legal and political context, while freedom is more useful in philosophical and more general ones. Hannah Arendt sharply distinguishes the meaning of freedom and liberty. According to her, liberation may be a condition of freedom but in no way leads automatically to it. Liberties can also be enjoyed in private isolation and can exist even without democracy, under a monarch, or in feudal hierarchy. But the actual content of freedom is participation in public affairs or admission to the public realm. Therefore, the freedom is applicable in the public realm and liberties even in private isolation. For a freedom, it requires a political way of life, which means the constitution of republic. Conclusion. Liberty is defined in different terms by different traditions. Earlier, in the view of classical liberalism, liberty is defined as the absence of restraint. Liberty is seen by them as an area where the state has no interference. When the coming of laissez-faire philosophy, market forces is seen as the natural regulatory mechanism for the mutual adjustment of civilized individuals who generally know and abide by the rules of the game. When the concept of welfare state has emerged, a welfare state with a vast network of regulations was therefore seen as a necessary instrument of freedom. In the view of Marxists, state itself is an instrument of the dominant class. Therefore, they prefer withering away of the state as a way to human freedom and emancipation. In the view of libertarians like Isaiah Berlin, state could guarantee negative liberty alone, that the individual himself was responsible for winning or losing the positive freedom. The view of negative liberty and positive liberty will be discussed in the next video. Then about the neo-Marxist thinkers like Marcus, necessary means of freedom was already available in contemporary Western society. That the individual was deprived of his freedom as he became a slave of technology and consumer capitalism. That a genuine urge for emancipation will go a long way in establishing a new social order where freedom will reign supreme. In a nutshell, the quest for freedom is a continuous process. Yet, it cannot be enjoyed by the individual in isolation. Now, we are coming to the end of this video. Then about the reading and references. The recommended references are On Ordered Liberty, a treatise on the free society by Samuel Gregg, Freedom by Tim Gray, What is Liberty? A Study in Political Theory by Dorothy Fosdick. Then the standard references are Political Concepts and Political Theories, especially chapter 4, 5, 7 and 8 by Gerald F. Goss, Political Concepts chapter 1 by Bellamy and Mason, Political Concepts, a Reader and Guide chapter 2 Ian McKinsey. Then the basic references are An Introduction to Political Theory chapter 16 O.P. Goba, Contemporary Political Theory chapter 8 J.C. Johari, Political Theory, Ideas and Concepts chapter 11 Sushila Ramasamy. If you are new to this channel, please do like, share and subscribe. Stay connected with us. Stay safe, study safe. Thank you.